Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for March 2nd through 8th. This week I read 3 books, I watched 1 show, I watched 3 movies, and I listened to 1 book. It is currently steal an hour of your sleep day, which is my least favorite day of all time. Why do we still do daylight savings time? Why is it still a thing? Because not only did I stay up later than I usually do last night crafting, because apparently that's a thing I need to do right now. We went from 1:59 a.m. to 3 a.m. so I got an hour less of sleep, so when I woke up it was still kind of dark out and I had to lay there just waiting for it to be sort of light out so I could film, which means I'm tired, I didn't get enough sleep, and I might be a little bit cranky. And it also means that I'm now using this as an excuse not to go to my gym class because I don't really want to go anyway. And because I'm behind schedule on filming this, I just won't get out the door on time. Oh no. Anyway, the first book I read this week is No Tomorrow. This is the second in the Killing Eve series, and in this book they finally actually meet face to face when both of them are conscious. Which is something I need to point out because apparently one of them has actually seen the other one up close and personal in the first book, but it just wasn't on the page. If you missed it a couple of weeks ago, I watched all 4 seasons of the Killing Eve TV show, which is based on these books, so I then went back to read the books. And yes, they are remarkably different, but I expected that, and it was just kind of fun to see what scenes and sequences they actually picked out to include in the TV series. In this one, we get a little bit more of the back and forth of, oh, you've got a crush on this villain, don't you? And it's like, this villain killed my friend, of course I don't have a crush on her, and I'm married. Again, the books aren't the worst thing I ever read, but I definitely preferred the TV show to the books. That being said though, the second book I finished this week is Die For Me, which is the third in the Killing Eve series. And in this one I noticed an interesting shift that I don't usually notice because the first 2 books are written in third person, and this book is written in first person, specifically from Eve's perspective. I don't really want to wreck anything for you, but in this one you definitely see these characters together way more than you saw them in the first book, aka never actually. And in this one some objectives definitely change, the status of relationships definitely change, and yeah, it's a flip-flopping good time. Kathy from editing here. I also wanted to mention that in this third book we get a non-binary character, but I don't know if it's the best representation. I think the author was trying. I think this author was actually trying to be inclusive, but I'm not entirely certain. Also, you can definitely tell that the United States president in this one is supposed to be a ripoff of 45 specifically, because at this point he didn't know 47 was happening, and that was a little bit funny to me. Also, this one had scenes at a location called, I think it's called Knock Tom. Tom Knock, Knock Tom. I think it's Knock Tom. And the funny thing about that is anytime I read books that are set in places I've been before, I get really excited about that. I've not been to Knock Tom. However, last week I think it was, I was up at my uncle's house and he was just playing the History Channel or something like that, and a show all about Knock Tom actually came on, so a couple of weeks ago I learned all about this location, so it's just weird to see it in this book. Learned about might be a little bit too strong. I heard about a bunch of things and I think I remember a bunch of things about it. Basically it's this platform out in international waters kind of area off the coast somewhere of the UK, I want to say, and it's where some pirate radio type of things used to go on, and it's also a place where somebody decided it was a principality and he decided he was the prince of this place, and then other people came and took it over, and then he actually came back with weapons and took it back from them, and it was a whole thing. But because I had kind of overheard this documentary about it, a couple of the things in the book I was like, oh, well they would have had to remodel to be able to do that, because I don't think that's what the sleeping quarters actually look like. But maybe in this fictional world they did remodel, and there are enough sleeping quarters for all these different people to have their own sleeping quarters. Whatever, it's fine. Obviously, being the third book in the series, I can't tell you much more than that, besides it definitely doesn't end the same way that the show ends. The third book that I picked up this week is the first book that I picked up for Galaxy-a-thon, and that's The Apollo Murders. This is by Chris Hadfield, and it took me a really long time to realize that technically I could probably use this for 4 out of 5 of the challenges. Because I had previously been like, well, Apollo is a space word to me, like I know it's not like sun or star or moon or whatever, but like you say Apollo and I don't think the god, I think space missions. Then you've got the mystery aspect because, you know, murders in space, who's doing the murders, what's happening. I think the third challenge I put this down for originally was, you know, takes place in space or doesn't take place on Earth. I think that's what that challenge was. I haven't really looked at the challenges before filming this video because why would I? But the fourth challenge that I didn't really realize it could technically work for is astronaut on the cover. If you look at the cover, which I have right here, there isn't a physical astronaut on the cover, but Chris Hadfield is an astronaut, And it has the word astronaut down here, talking about a best-selling book that he wrote previous to this, so I'm counting it. Which means that the only prompt that didn't take off was Alien Encounter, and I'm already reading a book that has that covered. This is a book primarily set in 1973, although we do have a couple of flashbacks to previous years, and it primarily covers this guy named Kaz. He was in training to become an astronaut. Something happens at the beginning of the book, kind of 5 years before the main part of this book, and it makes it so that his flight career is kind of over, but he's still in the military and he still kind of gets farmed around to different sections of the military to help out with different things. In this fictional version of 1973, they're about to launch Apollo 18, and it has a very specific mission that the public doesn't know about. It turns out that the Soviets have put a satellite in space that they kind of want to tamper with because they think it's going to be able to take pictures of things on Earth that they don't want them taking pictures of, and they've got a rover on the moon, so they want to disable that. However, this plan definitely doesn't go as smoothly as one would hope. And of course, there are some murders that happen. Who's doing the murder is definitely a mystery you have to solve along the way. I don't want to wreck anything for you because I didn't know anything going into this, and I just found this really cool. Firstly, it's really cool to know that you're reading a space book by a guy who's actually been to space, which means that a lot of the technical elements of different characters writing and doing flight checks and all these types of things feels even more real, because it's not something I usually pay all that much attention to, mostly because it's not my expertise, so I wouldn't know if it was written wrong. But it's definitely focused on in this book. You can definitely tell that Chris Hadfield really likes flying, whether it be just on Earth or in outer space. So I thought this was something really cool to finally tick off my list. Also, I read physically about the first half of this book, and then I wanted to be using my hands to do some crafting the other night, so I actually listened to the audiobook from the library for the second half of it while I sat there for like 4 hours doing cross-stitching, and that was a fun experience. I originally thought I might try to do that hybrid thing that people do where they look at the page and also listen to it, but I was like, no, I want to be crafting, so I haven't tried that yet. On to the one show I watched this week. We got the first episode of a new season of Jet Lag, and this one is called Shenzhen Showdown. Basically, 2 teams of 2 have 6 days to claim as many countries in the Shenzhen area of Europe as possible, and they do that by traveling to that place, and then also there's some battling going on if other people end up going to that place and want to try to take it over from them. It's a fun idea. This is how I get my travel content. Also, it's edited really, really well. I really enjoy it, and because we like to follow the episodes as they come out on Nebula, it's really, really fun to be able to do that. But because of that, we're like, oh, what's gonna happen? We have to wait a whole week to find out. And because of that, we actually went back and watched the 4th season of Jet Lag, which is a season where they were trying to do basically the same thing but with states in America, and the rules were slightly different. A fun parallel between these 2 seasons, however, is that the 4th person in the current season is Tom Scott, who I've seen because of his Lateral videos here on YouTube. But in the very first episode, somebody is like, hey, are you Tom Scott? And he's like, yeah, I'm Tom Scott, and we're doing Jet Lag right now, sorry, I gotta go type of thing. And in the 4th season, they were stopped at least once, maybe twice, where people were like, wait, Jet Lag? I love Jet Lag. So that was just kind of cool. I'll be honest, after watching enough episodes of this, sometimes when I'm traveling, I'm just like, wait, is that one of them? No, it's not. But one day, who knows? As for the movies we watched, we decided to have a roommate movie night and we watched Meet the Robinsons, which is something I had never heard of before, but I found quite adorable. It is about this character who was left on the doorstep of an orphanage when he was a baby, and he grows up and he's gotten to the point where it doesn't seem like anybody's going to adopt him. He's about to become a teenager, which apparently makes it even more difficult for him to get adopted, and he decides he's going to create a machine so that he can remember who his mom is so he can try to find his actual mother. Because he brings this memory machine to his science fair, he meets this character who says he's a time traveler, which is just silly, of course, and he says to watch out for this character that is, you know, really tall and wandering around with a bowler hat, and of course that character has sinister intentions. This is fun and silly and science fiction, but also just really heartfelt because this character wants to do good things for good reasons, and then we see the repercussions of different things and how different people can grow up in certain ways because of the ways they were treated this one day. It was just kind of fun and adorable. Another thing I watched for the first time with my roommates is The Blues Brothers. I had never seen this before, although I had heard, you know, it's a good movie. And this movie has way too many famous people in it for me to have never seen it before. This movie is from 1980, and as we start, we're watching this character walking through a jail just about to be released. And all of this is done in silence, and it's interesting that it's like that because no music actually comes on until he's out of jail and meeting his brother in the parking lot. And I knew immediately that's what was happening because it's so jarring to start a movie and not have any sound besides just like footsteps through the jail and that type of thing. And essentially these characters have to go see this nun that they grew up with because they grew up in an orphanage together, and she tells them that if she can't pay this tax bill within 3 weeks, then the church is just going to sell the school to the Department of Education, and they're like, no, we grew up here, that's ridiculous. We're on a mission from God to make sure that doesn't happen, so they decide to get the band back together. I'm unsure which movie holds this record now because Megan didn't know, but for a very long time apparently this movie held the record for most amount of car crashes in one movie, and as I was starting it I was like, that's a weird thing for this to have because like this doesn't seem like the type of movie that would have a bunch of car crashes. And then you get to the ending sequence and you're like, yeah, that is so many car crashes. Also, if you've ever seen it parodied anywhere where like a bunch of military people are coming in, they're like hut 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 hut. That came from this movie. There were so many extras in this movie, my goodness. But then you also have performances from the likes of James Brown and Aretha Franklin and Ray Charles, and for some reason Carrie Fisher is there. And watching her in this movie, I just thought to myself, if they ever wanted to do a biopic of her and they needed somebody of about the age that she is in this movie, I assume because I don't know exactly how old she was in this movie, a good face match for that would be Billy Bobby Brown. The third movie I watched this week is one called The Ghostwriter. I took a look at this and I was like, Ewan McGregor, Pierce Brosnan, you know, one is a ghostwriter for the other and there's some shenanigans going on. This seems like the type of movie I would watch. And then I started it and I was like, I've seen this before. All of this is too familiar. Oh, yep, no, all of these scenes are really familiar. Okay, yeah, I've seen this before. So this is all about Ewan McGregor. He's going to be a ghostwriter for this guy who used to be the Prime Minister of the UK, and now he's doing philanthropy things, and he essentially travels to the small island where this guy is staying while he's doing a tour of the States. It's kind of his home base, and he's given this manuscript to go over and kind of fix and change because it needs to be at the publisher within a month and it's in rough shape. However, on his way there, the news breaks that this ex-prime minister is possibly going to be tried in court because of potential war crimes from when he was prime minister, so you know, that's interesting. This one is a thriller, but also weirdly a little bit slow-paced, as you're just trying to figure out with this character whether or not this guy actually did these things and whether or not there's even more of a cover-up in his backstory. Also, it has Kim Cattrall in it, and I always feel like I need to mention that because she's from where I'm from. She actually went to the rival high school in my hometown. And she's got an English accent in this one, which almost holds up except for her very last scene. Some of it was a little bit not great, so I wonder if that's maybe the first scene they shot or something. I have no idea. Anyway, not the worst movie ever, but apparently it's kind of forgettable because I totally forgot that I had watched it before until I turned it on. I was like, ah yes, I remember this sequence. As for the audiobook I listened to this week, that was A Grim Reaper's Guide to Catching a Killer. This is all about a main character named Kathy, which was very distracting because hearing my own name said to me over and over and over in a book is just a little bit weird. I believe she's in her very early 40s, she's about to get a divorce, she's 6 months pregnant with her ex's baby and hasn't told him yet and is about to tell him. And oh yeah, she works as a Grim Reaper. She works in the Natural Causes Department, so usually it's a pretty easy thing. Essentially, she goes to collect the soul after the person has died and take them to processing. However, one day she shows up to the location, she goes around, and she can't find the soul, which is something that has never happened before, and causes quite an issue because if a soul isn't processed within 45 days, it becomes a ghost and it has to stay on Earth and like do haunting, and their corporation hasn't lost a soul like that in a very, very long time. She of course had to tell her boss that she couldn't find this soul, and while she's investigating and trying to figure out what happened, she does find the soul, who is a 17-year-old boy when he was alive. However, Connor is adamant that not only did somebody kill him, but somebody wearing the same badge that she wears killed him. So now she's got to figure out what the heck is going on. This was really great. One, I liked having this older female character, kind of middle-aged character. That's not something you see super often. Two, she has so much going on. Three, she just really wants to help out this kid, and she's facing this thing where she's like worried that she's not going to be good enough for this baby she's about to have, while she's actively being like the best mother this boy has ever known, which really sucks because, you know, he's dead now. This is the first in a series, however this book only just came out either late last year or early this year, so I'm like, okay, so when's the next one? And it hasn't been announced yet, and I'm like, I need it now. It was just such an interesting world, and I would love to see where we go from where we left off with these characters at the end, because so much happens in this book. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!